Welcome to the Outer Circle Inner Stillness, conversations and reflections on the spiritual life and the sobriety life, and altogether cultivating a healthy inner life that includes lots of thoughts, lots of emotions, lots of spiritual things, and the body as well. So today we're talking, we talk about parts a lot, so we're talking more about the body part today, and I'm very excited to do so. I'm here in the virtual studio with Jenny Hayo, and very glad to be back with her. Hello, Jenny. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm well. I'm up on time. I got a little bit of stretching in, and I'm feeling clean, so it feels good.
Smart you. You used your body.
I use my body. Yeah, it's one of those things that doesn't let me ignore it for very long
Mm-hmm.
without dire consequences. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the body
yes,
has a lot to say.
it does indeed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Can you say a little bit more about who you are? And I know you work with a lot of healing practices of various sorts. But yeah, what's your corner of the professional world, the IFS world, and yeah.
I'm Jenny again, and I'm really happy to be here. And, I think from a somatic standpoint, I come first and foremost from the yoga traditions. And so I started doing yoga in my 20s. I'm in my late 40s now, and found yoga to be the first place where I really remembered my body for the first time as a human. Doing practices, yoga can be very detailed and ask you a lot of questions about your muscles and your bones and how things feel. And it was really the first practice that I had to kind of wake me up into that realm of the body. So I'm very grateful for that. And as my yoga practice evolved, I became much more interested in the meditative traditions of yoga versus the postural, movement traditions of yoga. So I spent and still do many years, decades in the yoga meditation system and yoga philosophy and spiritual system. And I found like this disconnect between the way I meditated versus the way I was in my body when I was moving. And so over time, I found actually a Tibetan Buddhist tradition that is very much about meditating with the body. And when I started meditating with the body was the first time that I kind of married those worlds of meditation and somatic experience in the body and changed everything. And from there had just this ongoing longing to really study the body from more of an awareness standard rather than a movement place. And then that led me to a lot of the psychology that comes with the body, right? A lot of understanding how the body and the mind are, some people would say the same, or synchronized or not synchronized well. And that led me to all kinds of things, including Hakomi, which is a kind of a body centered therapy. And then now to where I am today, which is working with IFS and part systems and how the parts show up in the body. So that's my bio for you.
I love it. I love the journey and the different cultures and different traditions that all get woven together, and
Mm-hmm.
in this idea of remembering the body, which I definitely want to I want to remember to ask you about that. Uh, for the listener who might be a little bit new to some of these things, I know, like I said, we've talked about IFS, internal family systems, on the show a few times, so we're kind of familiar with that sense of the person as a system of parts, managers, protectors, the exiles, defenders, things like that. Can you say a little bit more about what is Hakomi, what is
Yeah,
a yes?
yeah. So Hakomi is a system that was started like probably in the 70s by this man Ron Kurtz, and it's a very body-based system, more than I would even say IFS is, where when you're trained in Hakomi, like in IFS, you're looking for parts, and in Hakomi, you're watching body patterns. And, if you marry these two worlds, you could say that you're watching how a part expresses in the body. They wouldn't use the word part, but that's how I would describe it. So you're getting to know parts through how like even me doing this gesture, right? This is a teaching part of me that has this gesture as I teach, right? So you can get to know parts through how people are living in their bodies and start to see what is showing up in the body. Is it more of a defensive part or a defensive body structure? Is it more of a exile or vulnerable structure that's there? And you can, just like you do in IFS, start to really meet all these places in ourselves that are held in the body that you can have a relationship with and start to maybe experience in a way that is supportive of your life.
Yeah, watching body patterns or watching how parts manifest in the body. And so there I'm thinking about just integrating different concepts. So in counseling in the counseling world, we're kind of familiar with the phrase, the body keeps the score. Or in like the dance movement therapy world, they'll say, the body never lies. And I think to talk around how the body, the very physical material flesh holds energy, holds emotion,
Yeah.
holds memory.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And sounds like what you're saying is that those memories and emotions and parts expressed through the body, through movements, postures, sensations, uh, and I would imagine sometimes outside of our conscious awareness. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I'm thinking of how, as in a therapeutic model, like someone can be talking to me and saying one thing, but their body's doing something completely different. They're
I'm
like,
so
"Oh, I'm
happy to see
great,"
you.
but their shoulders are like up here around their ears. And so there's a lot of unconscious expression in the body based on the body holding, carrying burdens, traumas. Our story is held in the body. So that definitely is, Hakomi is very interested in that, like what isn't being said or what is more that needs to be seen here to help work through this dilemma or this situation, so the person can learn more about what their system is doing, right? And have choice there.
Yeah, that's really great. And the first time I went to see a counselor, one of the things she often pointed out was my bouncing leg, because I I was doing this with
Mm-hmm.
my leg, and I was like, I've always done that. My mom does that. What? It's not a problem. And then, but she was like, Are you anxious about something? I mean, she said it more tactfully than that. And turns out I was very anxious. So,
Yeah.
uh, come to think of it, so was my mom. Anyway,
And
that's
these
really
things
great.
can be so, like, people do things like me with my hand gestures or you and your bouncing legs. We've carried it for so long. You know, we can carry it long enough that we don't notice it, right? That's one thing. Or we've just carried it so long that it just feels like it's just a part of us, or something that's happening us. But what we've seen with all of these modalities is if we really pay attention to it, if we really bring awareness to it, if we really start to ask questions about it, we find more, we understand more about what's going on in someone's system.
I think I see that as being one of the really big overlaps between what I know of Hakomi, what I know of somatic experiencing, and definitely what I've learned of internal family systems. Is they're noticing traditions. They're very curiosity based, very I'm becoming aware of something, I'm seeking awareness of something, and then just really gently, non-judgmentally sitting with that and saying, well, what else can I become aware of this awareness that I have? And sounds like the modalities you're talking about really take that out of just like the head region into into the body.
And I would say that's a cornerstone of all somatic work, is that it's really an awareness. These are awareness based systems where your curiosity, your kind awareness, your loving presence, your gentle attention, like all these ways that you can be with something is really what matters. It's, somatic work is different than like exercise per se, right? Because in exercise, you're just you got agenda and you're just doing your thing and you're pumping your muscles and getting your heart rate up. But in somatic work, it's there, there's really this, like in all these traditions, this kind of letting go of agenda and really seeing what's there and can I stay with this long enough for me to learn something.
I wonder if you might actually say a little bit more about that. And I'm asking that as someone who aspires to be a little bit athletic. I mean, I do yoga, I swim, run a little bit. I do like a little bit of weights, not in any really dedicated, serious manner, but in trying to move my body, there there's a sort of awareness that comes about. I think I have a sense of what you're talking about, the difference between I'm moving my body versus like I'm really aware of my body. Um, but I'm thinking about that difference between how like someone who's doing weights has to be kind of aware of like their body's limits and capacities versus like the kind of awareness you're talking about. I wonder if you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite subjects coming from the yoga world, and we see this in the yoga world a lot, just where I would say that a lot of Western yoga has lost the awareness based system part of it and has just turned towards postures and even performative states and, you know, kind of egoic, mindless movement that, not to knock all yoga, but that's definitely something that we've seen. And, I think anyone can go for a run. You could go for a run for an hour and come home and not really have felt your legs the whole time you were running. You can go for a run or be doing exercise and just be thinking in your head the whole time. In fact, people say that all the time, like, oh, if I want to think, I just go for a run or a walk. That's where I do my problem solving and my thinking, and that's great. There's like zero wrong with that, but this is something different than that. This is, you know you can move in a way that is encouraging awareness, right? You can go for your run and feel your heart rate change and your breath rate change and your legs move and your feet get tired. You can have a lot of awareness in the ways that you're moving your body or not. And that becomes, a choice in some way or a practice. It's really about practice, right? We can practice having awareness with our body at any moment. I think that people can feel like, oh, I'm really embodied, uh, just because I use my body a lot. And I think there's a difference. Like if we use that word embodied, embody means to know the body. You can use your body a lot and not know your body, or you can use your body a lot and know it really, really well.
That seems to be true in relationships also. uh,
Say
like,
more.
right. Oh, I'm just thinking about the way. Okay, so I do a lot of addictions recovery work specifically around sexual addictions, and what we often discover is there's people who can be very sexual with people, but not actually know them, or they can be having these intense sexual experiences, but actually in a way that's very disconnective from definitely from their emotions, definitely from thoughts, often from values, and in a sense, even from the body too, in that like the sometimes the sexual some of the more imbalanced sexual experiences can be so very like genital focused and pleasure orgasm focused, rather than what we try to invite these folks into is a more holistic, more embodied, more full body sensory. In my line of work, I encounter folks who will take these physical sexual risks without taking emotional risks, and will have these intense physical sexual experiences that still manage to disconnect them from most of the rest of their body. And that was what I was thinking when you had said, if I remember, that your phrasing was really cool, something like you can be using your body and not aware of your body, or
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, or the mind's powerful, right? You can use certain parts of your body and disconnect from other parts of your body. It can get really um, specific in what's available to us, what kind of access we have to the body or not. And I think that what you're saying when you're offering for people to have more holistic experiences, like where their whole body or more parts of their body are engaged in some way, or more parts of their experience are engaged in some way, right? that when you probably go into that conversation, people are meeting things in themselves that maybe are hard to meet or a little scary or new, or what they've actually been trying to avoid the whole time, right? That there's probably a lot there.
Very often, like yeah, very often when we talk, I'm starting to incorporate this more. Is I'm asking, what's a part, what's a thought, what's a feeling you notice. I'm starting to ask more often, uh, how does your body let you know about this? Which is a phrase that I picked up in a book around IFS and somatic experiencing, and uh, get everything from people who are saying, here's this very specific, burning sensation in my chest, and I don't like it, versus people who are like, I don't know. So, the
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'd be curious to hear more from you about, because you were talking about how your yoga practice helped you remember your body, and I wonder if
Mhm.
you could talk a little bit about kind of the cycle of forgetting and remembering the body, and some things that can contribute to both.
Yeah. Well, so that's an interesting question. When did I forget my body? If I remembered it, that means at some point in time I forgot about it. I think my particular story of growing up in a home with alcoholic parents is that there isn't a lot of body awareness, right? There's a lot of numbing, right? So I feel like I came in to the world in an environment that had a lot of numbing and never encouraged me, or wasn't shown by example, right, to how to feel the body, right? And so my remembering feels spiritual, like that I went through some process in my yoga to turn on, or I mean it's already turned on, but to activate my awareness with my body and to get that synchronized in a way that wasn't supported in my upbringing. So I came to, or remembered my body that way, and just over time, I often describe it as an unthawing. That because of my history and my trauma story, there was a lot of freezing and numbness that comes with that, and it's slowly over time. I had a pretty steady movement practice for 20 years, that everything just kind of came online in a way because I was inviting it, because I was willing to be with it and to try. And the unthawing happened, and it's like a second birth or something. It's like suddenly I have this first birth with certain limitations, and then I have a second birth that really gave me more of myself.
I'm really intrigued with the language you're using around having the second birth. It's a concept. It's a wording concept that shows up in, well, for sure in my spiritual tradition, this idea of being born again. But it's interesting to maybe see how that plays out in a really uh in a really embodied physical sort of way. Like, and I'm kind of wondering about like the intersection of, maybe say I am pursuing a greater spiritual awareness, and there's certainly spiritual practices that will support that, pending your tradition. But it sounds like that might be augmented or accompanied by, like, ideally, as you grow in spiritual health, you grow in at least not necessarily like physical, like athletic fitness, but at least like a kindness to yourself, or a greater, mastery over yourself, like not being given over to, my tradition, we just, use the language of being given over to the passions. But we could talk about no longer having compulsive relationships with this or that drug or experience or risky thing. And um and in that sense, like the body can awaken along with the spirit, and the the softening, the becoming aware of both, seems like they would complement each other really well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it is really spiritual. I mean, of course, the body is spiritual, and of course, the experience we can have even spiritual experiences that are very much from the body and embodied. And every time we gain more knowledge of ourselves spiritually, mentally, physically, emotionally, we are rebirthing in some way. I mean, we are becoming anew in some way. We are like different in the most basic way, right? In some way, we're getting more of ourself, and I think that the spiritual path is that's really for me all it's about is, to grow in spirit is to grow in to my fullness of being, right? To grow into all of myself. Um, and to grow into all of yourself, you have to have compassion. You have to have the ability to be with all of you. And a lot of that requires compassion.
Hmm.
So yeah, there's so much spiritual intertwinement with the body and with these experiences. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'm just thinking about the compassion and everything, and it's in my tradition. I mean, it's like like a cornerstone. Love your neighbor. Love God, love your neighbor, and how that gets described in the biblical text is there's like a little bit of like a cognitive aspect to it, but there's a lot of just like here's how it's played out, and a lot of instruction for here's how to live a life of love. Here's how to live a
Mm.
life that is compassionate toward others, toward your community, toward your vulnerable people, toward yourself as well. So I mean, there's not specific instructions on how to exercise, but uh,
How to have awareness in your body, right?
right, right. But we can infer that, as one is becoming a peaceful person and as one like cultivates the inner life, at some point, if that's a real thing, that will show up in how your outer life lives. And in my tradition too, I mean, we look at a lot of these, a lot of the saints, and they're they're gentle people.
Mhm.
A lot of them are ascetics, but they're very active in caring for people and active in serving those around them, and
Yeah.
in that sense like not just like embodying but also incarnating compassion as well.
Yeah.
So
Well, I think it's an important piece of the somatic approach, like, a somatic therapeutic approach is that, all of us have really hard things that happen in our lives, right? All of us have, the Buddhists call this the realm of suffering, that we as humans are living in a realm of suffering. We're living in a realm of other things too, but we are living in a realm that has suffering. And that is going to be part of your body experience. And it's not always going to feel good. And the body isn't always going to experience pleasure or even contentment. And there's going to be really hard things that happen. And if you want to expand, or I like to say, like, spiritual life to me is about expanding or evolving, right? You will have to meet some places in yourself and in your body mind system that are painful, emotionally painful, physically painful, and that I hope that the somatics that people are using are, doing that in a way, I'm sure they are, that it has to be met with compassion, right? If we're not meeting it with compassion and um, care, it's going to be hard for those things that our body is holding to expand or transform in any kind of way.
yeah, I can have all of this awareness and have all of this wisdom and have all of this insight, but if I have not loved, then what's the point of it?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Well
yeah,
said.
yeah. I'm loosely paraphrasing St. Paul there, but uh so on that, I wonder if you could offer some thoughts around the process a little bit. As we're talking around gaining awareness, remembering the body, coming back into oneself, kind of facilitating that undying. Um, and I love that idea of the undying of just the melting, the softening, and also it can be very slow as well. The way that a glacier melting takes a long time.
Yeah. And it can be, for me, it was an unthawing, but for someone else, it can be like, like my sensate body, my felt sense was missing in my awareness, right? Because of my story. And for someone else, it can be the other way, where the sensate material is so much and it's so big and it's coming in all the time. So it might be less of an unthawing for them and more of uh, a calming or a soothing, right? So how we do transform through the body is going to be really different for everybody.
That completely makes sense
Yeah,
because people just have different experiences.
really different
Yeah.
experiences, and how their systems manage those experiences is very, very different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
But your
for
question is around like how, like getting into practices.
yeah, yeah. And I'm thinking about a lot of the folks that I work with who will say they don't have a lot of a body awareness, or like when I say, can you shift your focus like inwardly, they draw a blank. Or
Yeah.
when I ask about, hey, where do you feel sadness in your body, they're just like, uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
things
I
like
have a
that.
lot to say about that.
Sure, go for it.
I think for a lot of people, just going inside or actually feeling physical content related to emotions, because emotions are so physical, is hard and can be really scary and can be the place where like all the trauma story is held and happens. So I do think there's a lot of steps that we can take towards being even able to work up to something like that. And I definitely think, movement systems like yoga or qigong or tai chi, or just like any of these movement systems that have been created around awareness, can be a great place to start, right? Because then if you go to a yoga class, like an awareness-based yoga class, and you do a lunge, they'll say, feel your foot, right? And so then you get to start to say, well, can I feel my foot? What does my foot feel like, right? And that for a lot of people is a lot safer and a lot easier than like, tell me what sadness feels like. So just getting involved in some kind of movement system that is awareness based, and lets your awareness have some focus, I think is a really skillful thing to do. I also think just like being curious about your body throughout the day, just like, oh, I'm standing here doing the dishes, is where's my weight in my feet, where's my what's the feeling of the soap on my hands, like just to start to ask the body like, oh, what does it feel like right now, to start to just be in a more of a curious relationship with it, is a really hard to remember to do, but when you remember, really usually simple for people. I have this practice when I'm teaching embodiment to folks that I have them do, where they lie down on the floor or they can sit up, whatever they want to do, for a few minutes. We set a timer, like maybe 3 minutes. And I just have them start naming out loud any sensation of any kind. Like if I did it right now, I can feel the pressure place between my knees because they're crossed, and I can feel the weight of my glasses on my nose. So there's some pressure there. I can feel a little heat in my cheeks. Yeah, just to like give yourself some time to go to the places in your body that are easy and feel safe. That you can just be like, oh yeah, I feel that. I feel, my foot sitting on the floor. I feel this little tickle in my throat. So, and like anything, it's a practice. Like if we are wanting more access to our body, it is practice. It takes time because most of us weren't taught that growing up. And the culture doesn't really promote that so well, right? Especially as we live in screen age and everything. And so it really it does require some commitment to being like, okay, I do want to maybe see what what my relationship with my body is like, and what kind of relationship I could have with it by offering it some more attention.
I really love that. And I really love the way that a lot of the examples you talked about are really common everyday occurrences. Like everybody has a kitchen sink. Some people should use them more than others. Um, uh, but but everybody has their feet on the ground at some point, or their feet up against a couch or something,
Yeah,
and everybody takes a breath. And
a
there's
breath. The
these
breath is the
really
best one.
right. I mean, it's like kind of our counseling cliche, like, take a deep breath, but there's a reason for that.
Mhm.
It's this sensory thing that's always with us. And
Mhm.
one of the other notes I think about what you're talking about, a lot of the experiences you were talking about were really gentle and really can be done really calmly. And you're talking about how the way society is set up doesn't always promote a lot of awareness. And I think one aspect of that is that yes, screens insert rant on screens, but also just like extremes and risks and these high adrenaline things. I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of access in our society to these really intense experiences, whether it's
Yeah.
drugs, whether it's porn, whether it's video games, whether it's bungee jumping or super 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 rich food. And I almost feel like there's a way that there's a sense of those things, that there's a way that you feel those, but there's a way that when a sensation becomes so intense, you can kind of hide behind it and fixate on just here's this intensity, here's this thing that's giving me a lot of dopamine, as a way of like not feeling other sensations or other senses
Yeah.
or other feelings.
Yeah, because then you're training your system to only be able to feel at that high of a level, right? And I think that's one of the I mean, I very much had that in the yoga system. I was someone who could like not because I trained well, but just from my genetics, I could like put my leg behind my head and I can like, do these big back bends and I could do these really extreme movements in my body where I'd feel a lot, I'd feel my muscles stretching and over time, as I got more into awareness-based body practices and somatics, you start to be able to feel the subtle more, right? Now I can lay down and feel like a whole forest inside of my body, and it's so subtle, right? And so, but it does take training to get there. And if we're always in this space where all the sensation comes from big, right? You're missing kind of going the other way into the subtle. And I think that people, I mean, you would be able to tell me more than I know, but I think because we are so disembodied as a culture, typically, we really live in our heads a lot and our attention is stolen from us all day long, that uh, we have to have stuff that big to even feel.
Yeah, absolutely. We could think of it as tolerance in a sense. That's certainly language that we use in the addictions recovery world. Is you gain a tolerance to a substance, which means how that plays out is you need more of it to get the same effect. Or in kind of the sexual world, it means needing more and more novel content, more intense,
Mm-hmm.
more extreme, more risky content.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And part of what that is, it's the brain's adaptation to saying, well, there's this intense experience that's happening all of the time and it's not normal, but we're going to adjust our internal levels to pretend like it's normal so we
Yeah.
can survive it.
Yeah.
And in that sense, yeah, like our our baseline for normal gets just like raised really high.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And the more you have access to feeling the subtle, right? When you practice and you do the practices of going more towards the subtle, though for me those extremes they became just way
no,
too
I
much.
really love that, and I really love yeah, bringing that awareness to what you were talking about. You become more accustomed, you become more aware of the subtleties, and in that sense, the intensities become a little bit too much after
Too
a while.
much. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
That
so
was my experience. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think I've experienced that as well on some different levels. Like I know one of my things that I've had to be careful with is how I consume media and how I consume shows. And certainly have had the experience, which back then I experienced it as fun, of the I'm gonna stay up all night binging Lost and watching 4 hours of television at a stretch. At one point in my life was kind of enjoyable, and at this point in my life, like like one episode a night is like kind of pushing it, just because I've been
Mm,
trying to step back from it, because I was noticing this is a dissociative experience for me. And
mhm,
once I get caught up in the story world, like I kind of don't have a lot of presence after that, or a lot of mental
mm,
functioning, or
mhm,
there's a drunkenness that came after that. And so
mm,
now I'm like, well, okay, if I'm gonna watch TV, it has to be the last thing I do in the day, and then I go to bed.
mhm.
And like really like watching more than in like an hour or so it's not as fun anymore, or it just feels like kind
Yeah,
of overwhelming. So
yeah. And you wouldn't have gotten to that unless you were able to feel that, like, oh, there's like this drunkenness afterwards, or I feel just like that. To me, those are even body sensations. There's this disassociative feeling, those are because you have that awareness, right? That starts to inform your choices.
very much so.
And I think that's of any awareness-based system, whether it's the body or not, but since we're speaking about the body, the more awareness you have, the more knowledge you gain, and the more knowledge you gain, the more choice you have, right? And it's that awareness to knowledge to choice that really has this tremendous effect on our lives, right? To just have the freedom to make informed choices based on the knowledge that we're getting from our awareness. That's really what it's all about.
Yeah, that feels really good. Bringing that informedness and that consent to all of your life. I mean, we for sure talk about like consent, for sure in like sexual scenarios, which absolutely we must. But but it seems like there's a lot of choices you can make. Before it's like, hey, how do I get this person off of me? There's a lot of other choices you have access to throughout your day about a lot of life,
Mhm.
of
Mhm.
like, do I need to eat this or not? Do I need to watch this or not? Do I need
Mhm.
to move my body or not? Do I need to,
Mhm.
uh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, so then so it sounds like if somebody were interested in this and becoming aware of maybe all that they don't yet have awareness of and wanted to
Mhm.
pursue this awareness, sounds like a gentle start is really good.
Yeah, and I think that, we have this old saying in one of the yoga systems I studied, and like start where you are, right? You don't want to like if someone is has a busy life and they're moving around a lot and they coming to an awareness practice, it's maybe not going to help them to just sit them down and meditate. That's going to be like a shocking change in their system, right? So you just maybe that you go into just like a movement system that has awareness and maybe is a little slower than the pace that you're at, but isn't like this shocking distance. So it's the same for any practice, the practice with the body. I want to engage with something that I can do, right? It should be realistic and attainable, is what my good friend Lucy Hackbird always says. Whatever practice that you're going to do, it should be realistic and attainable for your system right now. And I'm also a meditation teacher who leads meditation retreats, and I've seen so many people like never meditated for a day and then they're on like a 10-day silent retreat, and it's so intense for their systems, right? And bless their hearts for their intentions of being there. But the same is true with somatics practice. Like what's like a realistic and attainable step to take? Does that mean once a week I'm going to try this yoga class that seems like it would be a right fit? Or is there a guided something that I can do, meditation practice that I can do, just what will work for you? If you're a walker, and you typically walk with your podcast on and or with another person and you're talking, like maybe you take a walk where there's no distractions, right? And then you can start to be more aware of paying attention to your legs and your feet and your breath. So I try to, when I work with people on this, I try to like what's the first movement towards this that isn't some giant change in your system yet.
I really, really deeply resonate with that from watching my own experience, from watching the clients that I work with, from also like how like the disciplines are taught in in my faith tradition. It's very much this, start where you are, do a little bit, do a little bit consistently,
Yes,
but just do,
consistency is key.
yeah, but just a little bit. And I almost get the sense like even like quality is almost a little bit secondary,
Mhm.
as long as because if you're doing it consistently and kind of open to making adjustments as you go, like that becomes the most important thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, and sometimes you're gonna have the intention to take a walk and feel your legs, for 5 strides, and you can't. Like, you get maybe half a stride in or none at all, and then some days you can have that intention and it really works, and I totally agree with you, like, it's really about consistency, and we know this a lot from meditation practice, like, if you just keep showing up, if you just keep sitting down, if you just keep putting your attention there, it will have an effect. It will have an effect.
Right.
Yeah.
So a few walking strides, a few mindful breaths, noticing the soapy water,
Yeah.
feeling your feet. So
Yeah, I'm even thinking like, gosh, just like what if you have a little timer on your phone that goes off every 25 minutes and you just be like, "Oh, what do I feel in my body right now?"
yeah,
Just that,
yeah,
you
that
know?
that could be really good.
Yeah, and I do love this practice of lying on the ground and really just naming when I have people do it, I have them say it out loud, even if they're by themselves, so that there's something about the sensation getting to the language that is helpful in really knowing it, right? To put language to a sensation. It's not always necessary, and there's times where maybe that wouldn't be needed, but I think especially in the beginning, like these felt sense words, we use this thing called felt sense words, which is like, what is the word that really describes the sensation? And when we're looking for that word, we're having to really look at the sensation. And so if I'm feeling pressure, right? Pressure is a felt sense word, tingling, warmth, scratchy, it's really the word that describes the sensation. And if we're having to come up with a word, it really helps us focus on the sensation itself. So if
Mhm.
someone sits down or lays down and just starts speaking their felt sense words out loud, even just for a minute, that's a wonderful practice.
That seems like it would be because it's another way, yet another way of engaging, yet another sense, yet another body organ, embodying the sense, and then yet another way. And I'm thinking like you're talking around the value of doing that on your own, which yes, but I'm thinking about how like speaking is kind of a relational thing too. I'm thinking about how like in the interconnectedness between systems, between people, is
Yeah,
yet an even deeper way of the body becoming real and the awareness becoming real and really powerful. And I don't know, I camp on community a lot as like really essential for a lot of things. So
totally.
turns
Well, when
out
I teach that practice, I'm always teaching it in workshops and I have them do it in pairs. So one person lies down and does the reporting, and the other person is the listener, right? And then they switch. And the listeners get just as much like learning about their own bodies, right? As this other person is reporting their body, it encourages them to check in, like, oh, yeah, what's it like in my shoulder? This person just said what's in its shoulder. So I really appreciate that, the relationality of it.
yeah,
Yeah.
huh, that's given me some ideas for trying some stuff out in group.
Try it out.
Okay,
Use it with people. Yeah.
okay, we'll do it, it'll be good.
Steal it, take it, run with it. It's yours.
Absolutely, I'll run and I'll feel my legs. Uh, so, Jenny, if somebody is listening and interested in learning more about the body, learning more about awareness, or about Hakomi in particular, what are some resources, books, podcasts, or other things that you'd recommend?
I would say that one of my great teachers, and again, this is more of a meditative system, but I think that he really offers it in a very accessible way, even for people who are maybe turned off by meditation. That, his name is Reginald Ray, and he has, well, it was a CD series. I don't think anyone uses CDs anymore, but it's called Meditating with the Body. And a lot of the practices are done lying down, so you're not even having to sit up for long periods of time. And I recommend that a lot to people. I mean, it is spiritual, it's Buddhist, so it has spiritual undertones to know about. But he's really offering just ways to experience the body, from a very focused place. So I really love his work, and I love that beginning practice. And I think his website is Dharma Ocean, Dharma. And they even teach 12-week courses on that. So you can take a Meditating with the Body 12-week course that they run pretty often, I think. Gosh, there's so many resources. Really finding a practice that to me is the big thing. And I think in community is good, like you're saying. So again, like, maybe checking out a local yoga studio, or some kind of movement place that offers maybe a little more slow or subtle movement. What else can I suggest? There's just body-centered therapists, right, who can sit with you and help you explore what's happening in the sphere of the body. So those exist in the world. See, I'm not giving you enough concrete things. What else? I think one of the best books that I've really read on embodiment and is the same guy, Reggie Ray. He has this book called Touching Enlightenment. And again, it's Buddhist, so it has spiritual conversation. It's like a textbook a little bit about embodiment. So it's one of those books you can kind of just open at a page and read a sentence and you're like, I got a lot for the week. If you do read it cover to cover, it's probably one of the best things I've ever read on the relationship between the mind and the body and the spirit, and just like the whole organism through a felt, lived sense of the body. I highly recommend that book.
That sounds great. I really appreciate the resources, and I love that there's a lot, and that they can be kind of specific. And yeah, so folks, there's a lot of resources out there to read, to listen to, and some groups and practices out there if this is resonating with you. And for you, Jenny, if someone wanted to reach out to you in particular to talk more about these things, or to work with you, where can you be found?
Yeah, you can just go to my website, which is my name, jennyhayo.com.
Cool. That is great.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for being here and for sharing some story and some practice. I've learned a lot. I've gotten a lot to think about. I'm totally like checking my body now. And
good. Let's all do it. Ready, everybody? Take a moment. Name one thing you feel in your body. Okay, good job.
Right. Cool. Well, thank you again so very much. And we'll have to do this again sometime.
I'd love it.
Cool.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks, Reese.
Thanks, Jenny. Have a wonderful day.
You too.
Bye. Thank you for joining me in today's conversation. My name is Reese Basimio. I'm an Eastern Orthodox Christian and a clinical counselor with specialties in substance use, compulsive behaviors, sexuality, and trauma. You can reach me through newpatterncounseling.com. This episode was mastered by Breakfast Puppies. Theme music is by Titus Lockard. Please like, rate, review, and share this podcast from all your favorite platforms. Please also consider showing your support of this work through contributing dollars through the podcast page at patreon.com/outercircle. Thank you, and see you next time.